Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here today. I'm very excited to have Ian Berkowitz with Berkowitz Associates in Boca Raton back with us today. Ian came on originally when we were first all taking out our PPP loans, and he gave us a lot of great information. And we're very fortunate that we were able to have him come back today to talk about the Paycheck Protection Flexibility Act. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Ian. I also want to let you know at the end of Ian's presentation, we will be doing Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can type them in and Ian will answer them. So thank you, Ian, and thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Well, I appreciate the invite. I'm glad to be back. It's certainly an exciting time. I know that many of you will probably learn about certain things that you have heard of, read about, seen on the news, but nonetheless don't have a lot of details. And in essence, that's what this is for, so that you understand, I guess, my background and what I've done, and more importantly, why I'm a good source to be able to get information. I do corporate and business law. I've been practicing for 28 years, but I was an attorney with the U.S. Small Business Administration. I started working with them in Florida in 1992, doing disaster assistance relief on Hurricane Andrew, and then was transferred and promoted up to Washington and stayed with the agency for another 4.5 years, practicing all aspects of SBA regulations, SBA laws, SBA certification programs, financing programs, as well as government contracting. After I left my career with the government, I worked and did securities law. I learned how to raise not only debt, government debt with the government, but also then securities and selling equity to investors and bringing in investors and doing equity. I then went in-house when I moved back down to Florida, where I grew up. I went in-house and was general counsel and chief operating officer of a company. So I have the experience in having run a business, as well as all the aspects of a business, from payroll to cash flow management and those things. And then I ended up doing lots of seminars between, say, 2002 and 2010. And that's when I also had a radio show on NPR called The Business Counselor, which dealt with all aspects of legal and financing business issues, as well as I did a column for the Boca News at the time, on all a weekly column. So between the radio show, between the column, and between, in essence, my practice, business and business law, both setting them up, buying them, selling them, financing them, and the agreements related to operating them is my area. SBA is my specific specialty because of my background, having dealt with being an attorney for SBA, and then having done hundreds of SBA loans over my last 20 years in private practice. So it's an area that I know well. It's an area that I don't get too uptight about when I see all of this new regulation and legislation come down. It's an area that I still have lots of contacts with. So if I need additional guidance, I know where to go. And more importantly, sometimes I get asked to participate because I have the private sector background. So I'm happy to share my knowledge. I'm happy to share the activities related to my background, and more importantly, give you some additional guidance on what you need to know. Now, in the very beginning of my program that I dealt with the last time I was with the Chamber, we talked about, at the time, in essence, money that was available to businesses based upon the disaster and, more importantly, the coronavirus. And in essence, the first, if you remember, the first thing that was announced when money was available for businesses was the SBA Disaster Relief Loan. Those are called IDLE loans because it specifically deals with economic injury, and it's called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, also known as IDLE. Government loves acronyms and likes to shorten it, so that's the IDLE loan. That was the primary thing that dealt with getting money out on the street. When in essence, and the IDLE loan program has been around since the inception of the agency. It's for any kind of disaster. So as you all know, we're in hurricane season now. If, God forbid, there's a hurricane that comes, or any kind of a flood or fire or anything, the SBA IDLE loan program or the SBA disaster assistance relief programs are going to be the one that gets money out on the street. These are government loan programs that come directly from the government as opposed to the other SBA programs which go through lenders. But the EIDLE loan was the first loan. The second loan was the CARES Act, and that was shortly afterwards. And that's when Congress and the president decided that they needed to get immediate relief related to getting employees and businesses to maintain employment. When that happened, the CARES Act, also known as the Payroll Protection Program, that was the second aspect of money that went down, but that was different than the SBA disaster assistance. The SBA IDLE Loan Program is a direct loan program from the government with a check coming from the government. The CARES Act, or the Payroll Protection Program, is a program that runs similar to the 7A loan program, which is an SBA government guaranteed lending program, where you apply to private lenders, and from private lenders that do underwriting and approve your loan, the government will guarantee those loans. That's the additional type of financing that was available. The third type of financing was part of the EIDLE loan program, of which you directly applied to the government, and that's the EIDLE advance. And that's in essence the grant. A lot of people, if you did apply for EIDLE, or if you went on in the very beginning when all businesses were available to apply, you did see that there was this grant. And the grant was up to $10,000, and it was in essence available to all businesses that applied. At some point when that was started to be applied for, SBA made a rule change and said, well, you're only eligible for technically $1,000 per employee, so you needed to have 10 employees to get the maximum 10,000. But that was shortly after the program was announced. The bottom line is that is a total grant and not a loan, and that does not have to be repaid. The last part of the program is not a new program, but it's in essence the best way to put it is a amendment and a further, I guess, a further expansion of the existing PPP loan program. And it was really meant to shake out some of the issues that the original PPP program, when it was first passed, didn't necessarily contemplate. It was also meant to deal with shaking up and maybe providing additional relief, because as COVID continued and as Congress and the administration wanted to make sure that there was proper financial relief, they realized that what they had contemplated and thought in the beginning wasn't going to be enough. And so hence on June 5th, the additional Payroll Protection Program Flexibility Act of 2020 was then approved and signed into law. Okay, so as we talked about going over what the first, or actually it's the second, but after the SBA IDLE loan program, the CARES Act is the one that in essence was really so that workers and employees would not have to go to the state to deal with unemployment and collect unemployment. Even though the CARES Act did provide provisions in dealing for the states in giving more unemployment benefits to people who were laid off, the real goal of the CARES Act under the original PPP was for you to be able to make sure that you can maintain your employees, you can maintain payroll with your employees, and that you be given a program that if you kept them on payroll and if you were able to keep your business running, even if it may not have been open, but if you can keep it technically running by dealing with your expenses, then you'll have the ability for that amount to be forgiven. Now, why was that important? It was important because at no point in time, and will there ever be, the SBA Disaster Assistance Loan EIDLE program will ever be, in essence, a forgiven program, because it's always been a long-term loan and it will continue to be a long-term loan. So when CARES Act came out, it really was to focus on what can we do to not add debt on entrepreneurs and businesses, but if we had to add debt, provide a mechanism that it could be forgiven later on in the future. So As you probably have realized, as many of you may have applied for it, its key was to deal with payroll, and payroll needed to be 75% of the loan proceeds. It was to either rehire or restore them at their pay, and it did give you 25% to deal with overhead expenses and employee benefits. The EIDLE loan, as I had mentioned, the EIDLE loan has always been around. It will still be around. It's actually a two-part program. Disaster relief is both a physical loan that you can get if your home or your business premises is destroyed or damaged, as well as the economic injury. For purposes of COVID-19, the economic injury portion is the only thing that is being dealt with, and there is no physical damage part of COVID-19 relief, but everyone is applying for economic injury. The terms of it is up to $200,000 that you can get. For any business or for-profit business, the loan repayment is 3.75%. It's payable over 30 years. So for most people, that is probably your best financing and your best rate and your best terms and conditions on getting capital than any other business loan that you'll probably get or have. For nonprofits, it is 2.75% for nonprofits, of which it really expands so that most any and all nonprofit businesses are eligible for this kind of a program. Now, it again was also meant to retain employees, rehire workers, restore pay, but it went further. You can use the proceeds for all overhead expenses. You could use it for all types of different working capital needs, debt service refinancing, and anything, okay? What's now happened, and the changes from when it was first put in place to now, is that the application process has been substantially streamlined. In the very beginning, when this program was started, there was a Form 5, which was a paper form, and then you needed to submit multiple documents in order for it to be reviewed and approved. At some point in time, about 3 weeks into that process, the SBA decided to get rid of that process and then go to an online version and an online application, which is a substantial streamlined application. That has been subsequently even replaced with an even more streamlined version. And I will share with you an insider concept is that in the very beginning, because of the volume that SBA was receiving under the EIDLE program, the entire processing procedure was outsourced to a third-party government contractor. At some point in time, because it was so overwhelming and people were waiting for weeks to get even a response, that was taken back to the SBA. The SBA has hired substantial amount of loan processors, temporary employees, but loan processors, attorneys, and others to be able to deal with now the agency processing those loans. So the good news is that it's been now streamlined. The agency has taken back full control of it. And the bigger benefit for businesses that still have a capital need is that there is no date of which has been set right now for you not to be able to apply. So unlike the PPP loan program, you need to submit an application no later than June 30th, which is next week. That is the cutoff date and that is the end date. And I suspect because of the Flexibility Act did not provide for an extension, I can guarantee you that there will be no extension. So if you have not applied for PPP, you have between now and June 30th to apply. And that means that you need to get a confirmation that your application has been submitted. If you wait, the only loan program that you'll have that's going to be available to you will be the SBA Disaster Relief Loan or the EIDLE loan. So it's not a bad thing, but if you are looking for forgiveness and you do want to deal with a forgiveness program, then you have to apply under the PPP loan program, because the EIDLE loan program is a fully guaranteed and fully loan program with no forgiveness feature. So applications are still being taken in, and money is still available, a substantial amount of money, as a matter of fact, okay? Let's go over some statistics, because I know we're gonna get to And so that you understand what's going to be covered, I'm going to cover all of the overview, and then I'm going to start getting into the forgiveness portion in addition to the form that's required, so that you all can really understand what needs to happen, what documents you need, what the forms say, and how to fill them out. So sorry for not giving you the overview ahead of time, but that's what we're going to be accomplishing here today. The SBA IDLE Loan Statistics. As of June 6th, there's been about 1.1 million in loans that have been approved, which comes to about $79 billion. Almost $80 billion has been distributed through the SBA IDLE Loan Program. Believe it or not, there are approximately 5 million remaining loan applications in the pipeline, which again is a good thing, okay? If you remember, the initial amount under the first CARES Act was $349 billion. Then an additional $365 billion was approved. So there is still a substantial amount of money in the hundreds of billions of dollars that are available for not only PPP, but also for IDLE loan. So do not think that there's no money left. There's going to be no issues when it comes to dealing with money. There is plenty of money left. But there are 5 million loan applications in the pipeline. My recommendation is to get yours in. Just to give you an idea, the top 4 states in loans are California has closed approximately 196,000 loans, of which the total amount is, I think that actually should be 47 billion. That's a typo. I apologize for that. They have by far the largest amount. Florida has closed 109,000 under IDLE program for just under 7 billion. Texas, 95,000 loans approximately for just under 7 billion as well. And New York at about 81,000 for about $6 billion in loans. Most businesses that have applied are getting approximately 150,000. And just to give you an idea, I've gotten a lot of calls from clients of mine who I've been working with, and they tell me that now they're getting emails from SBA that there's eligibility and they should apply and they should get their application in, and for them to make a determination as far as what they want. Most people I know of are even getting offers for $150,000. So if that's something that you really think you need and you want to apply, okay, at the end of the day, getting capital and having capital in your business is really the biggest issue. And so, I know a lot of people are debt adverse, but getting this kind of debt at this kind of a rate is not bad, but more importantly, keeping your business open is the more critical issue. So just to give you an idea, most businesses are receiving about $150,000. Under Payroll Protection Flexibility Act. So this is the new one that just got passed in June. So let me go over the overview as far as what it generally does. It was really meant to clean up some of the additional legislation after comments and issues and people griping or business owners saying we're not even open yet. How can we deal with these rules? They decided on taking all of those concerns and questions and issues and revising the PPP program so that there would be a lot more flexibility for businesses. So what are the big features? It extends the maturity from 2 years to 5 years. Originally, you needed to repay all of the money within 2 years, especially the portion that's not forgiven. So if you use proceeds and it ultimately ended up not to be forgiven, then you had to pay off the loan within 2 years. That has now been extended to 5 years. The largest and biggest issue was the time period of which you were going to have to spend the money in order to deal with forgiveness. Originally, that was 8 weeks. And again, because of the issue of businesses not being open, businesses being at 50%, and not being able to fully disperse all of that money, it's now been extended to 24 weeks. Just to give you an idea, anyone who has a loan that they got proceeds from prior to June 5th has now the option to choose the 8-week or the 24-week. Any loan that's being dealt with after June 5th, that you've got the money after June 5th, you definitely have the ability to be able to deal with the 24 weeks as well. It extends the timeline to rehire employees in good faith exemptions. Beforehand, we needed to deal with a specific period of which you needed to rehire, which was through June 30th, 2020. That has now been extended. And there are certain exemptions that will even allow for you to be able to get the portions of the loan forgiven if you don't rehire, or you're not at the same level or have the same employees as you had previously. There's also a loan deferral period. That would mean, again, if there's part of the loan that was not forgiven and now it needs to be forgiven, payments don't start within a specified period of time. They're now extended and deferred. The biggest benefit, I think, to most business owners was that the payroll allocation originally out of the loan proceeds, no less than 75% had to go to payroll. That has now been reduced to 60%. I know a lot of the small business groups wanted it to be a 50-50, but I think it was a good compromise to get to 60. That means that in the event that you spend 60% to payroll, it will be forgiven. You can use 40% for other things in order for it to be forgiven, as long as those uses are accepted and are part of the requirements. And then if it's not part of the requirements, such as the rent or the mortgage or your mortgage interest or utilities, if it's not used for that, then again, that's the non-forgiven portion. For taxes, it extends employers' tax deferrals, and this is regarding Social Security portion of taxes due for businesses through 2022. And we're going to go into further details. It's actually a 50% on 2021 and 50% due on 2022. And the last thing is that there is a safe harbor on reductions for rehiring employees, which means that if you cannot rehire your employees or you do not have it at the level, if you've done certain things, you can still get that loan portion forgiven. Let's go through what the PPP statistics are to date. As of June 20th, there have been a little over 4.6 million loans approved and 514 or approximately $515 billion that have been distributed through the PPP program through PPP lenders. Applications are being submitted and will be accepted through June 30th, period. Not a day after. They will not take anything on July 1st. So if you want to get in on the PPP loan program because you want it to be forgiven and you'd like the loan to be forgiven, you have to make application in by June 30th, 2020. There are no exceptions. Right now, there's approximately $120 billion left. So there's plenty of money left. If you think that you need money and you have employees that you want to rehire, do not wait. Make sure to put in an application, find a lender that will accept your application and get it in, okay? Because the date of which you apply is going to be the date of which it's going to be calculated for purposes of eligibility. If you even think that you're going to be dealing with getting employees later, as long as you can show what your employees were last year and you have the documentation to apply. That's my advice. The top 3 industries, so that you know, that comprise of at least 40% of the distribution of the money, is healthcare and social assistance. Professionals, scientific and technical services received money, and the construction industry businesses received money. As far as the type actually that should be for PPP loan, California closed approximately a little over 500,000 loans for approximately $67 billion. In Florida, we closed approximately 368,000 for approximately $31 billion. Texas closed 372,000 loans for approximately $40 billion, and New York at 305,000 for approximately $37 billion. So the top 4 states did, at least almost about $175 billion within the top 4 states. Just so that you understand, the average loan size under the PPP program was 110,000, and an overwhelming majority of the loan sizes are 50,000 and less. Approximately a little over 3 million loans were 50,000 or less. The next largest was 14%, and that was about 670,000 loans. and 8% for the 150 to 350,000. I will tell you, because of course the media loves to report as far as the gotchas and the what ifs, especially on the large businesses. Any loans that were done from $2 million and above, and even when it came to dealing with $5 million and above, was a little over 1%. So out of all of the distribution of all of the money, any of the loans that were really in the million range, let alone 2 million and above, was 1% of the entire program. So let's get into the specifics, because we went through the overview before. The specifics related to the Flexibility Act is that business owners can apply for the forgiveness after 8 weeks up to 24 weeks. So the truth is that you can apply anytime, but if you want to apply for the 8 weeks, then you need to identify your covered period as 8 weeks. If you want to apply that you were spreading the money out after 8 weeks and needed more than 8 weeks to get payroll in place, to deal with rent, to deal with utilities, you weren't open and you got the money, but you still weren't open yet, then you have to elect to deal with the 24 weeks in order for you to submit for your forgiveness. As I mentioned before, maturity is now from 2 years to 5 years, but this is solely for the portion of your loan proceeds that were not forgiven. The covered period, whether it's the 8 weeks or certainly the 24 weeks, can be no later than December 31st, 2020. So assuming, and that's based upon the calculation, if you can calculate anything after June 5th, that would be an application of which in essence you're applying for. They're covering in essence the next 6 months in order for you to get your money, in addition to be able to get it spent for it to be forgiven. So regardless of where you choose to deal with the covered period, the max of the 24 weeks cannot exceed December 31st, 2020. Now, it also does create for these exemptions so that if you don't restore all your employees or you don't even reopen your operations because of COVID, you still can get your entire loan forgiven. On the payroll allocations, which I mentioned to you before, when it was first put into law, it was 75% must go to payroll. Payroll costs will go over as well, but payroll is not only wages, but it's benefits, it's insurance, it's any full entire payroll benefit or employee benefit that an employee gets. That's now been reduced to 60%. However, this is the big change. The big change is that it's what we call a cliff, meaning that if you do not use 60% of the money for payroll, then none of it will be forgiven. You have to use 60% of the money towards payroll. So what they did with the Flexibility Act is they said, listen, we understand that payroll may not be the major priority, but we need to ensure to make sure that 60% of that money is going towards payroll and employees. If you don't use 60%, it's kind of like using it for working capital. So the fact of the matter is that if you want to get your money forgiven and your loan forgiven, you cannot even come close, in my opinion, but you have to have no less than 60% of that money and be able to support and show that 60% of that money went to payroll. I do have the thing related to owners, because I know a lot of business owners, including myself, take salary on our business. And again, based upon the 8-week covered period, because there's a cap of 100,000, the max that you as the business owner would be able to take in salary would be $15,385. And if you are using it on the 24-week covered period, then it's going to be $20,833 for that 24-week period. That's solely for the owner, okay? And as far as the tax deferral, as I mentioned to you, it's the Social Security portion of the employee's portion, or the employer's portion. What'll happen is that if you choose to defer it, you'll have two payments that are going to be due, 50% each. One will be due by December 31st, 2021, and the second will be due by December 31st, it should be 2022. Under the rehiring, a lot of questions are coming in, and I've dealt with people related to dealing with rehiring and what the exceptions are. So here in essence are the exceptions, okay, as well as the rules. The CARES Act provided that you needed to keep the same amount of employees or the equivalent in part-time employees to full-time employees on payroll that was used, or you needed to rehire them by June 30th, 2020, okay? The exception is that if your employees were rejecting offers to come back, you could use that in order to still get forgiveness. However, here's the new changes. The new changes under the Flexibility Act show that you need to rehire people by December 31st, 2020, as opposed to June 30th, 2020. If you were unable to rehire an individual who was employed on or before February 15, 2020, if you can show that you're unable to rehire that individual who was an employee, that's an exception. There's also an exception if you can demonstrate that you're unable to return to the same level of business prior to February 15, 2020. And the last exception is if you can demonstrate the inability to hire similarly qualified employees on or before December 31st, 2020. So the takeaway from these exceptions are this. You have now to the end of the year to hire everyone, okay, and get to the level that it was prior to February 15th, or certainly based upon when you applied for and the calculation of the employees prior to COVID. The second one is that if you clearly have put all of these kinds of, you went to go speak to people, you went back to your employees, and they're not accepting reemployment. They want to stay on unemployment compensation, which I know a lot of employers are dealing with. As long as you can show that, then that will help you in dealing with getting the loan forgiveness portion on the payroll taken care of. Same thing if your business is not functioning. A lot of the restaurants, a lot of the different businesses, certainly bars, restaurants, businesses in the hospitality industry are definitely feeling that they can't even open and certainly can't open at the full level. So if you can show that you cannot and have not been able to open, again, that payroll component and that rehiring requirement will be an exception. And then of course, the same thing, if you can't find qualified employees that can do the same job, certainly, that's going to be on a case-by-case basis in certain industries, because not every industry potentially will be able to show that. But certainly if you have, let's just say you're a trade business and you're dealing with people that have a certain skill, whether it's electrical contracting and plumbing and an attorney or a doctor's office and that kind of stuff, and you're dealing with people that are no longer really available in the workforce, that's what that's meant to deal with. Okay, on the loan forgiveness procedure, let's now get into what you need to do in deal with forgiveness. What we had talked about before is that in the very beginning, when loan forgiveness was announced, there was a form that was established, which was a SBA Form 3508. It was an 11-page form, of which 6 of the pages were dealing with the documentations and calculations you needed to deal with, and you needed to have everything put together in order for that to happen. And so I think what happened is the SBA as well as Congress got together and they got feedback from individuals who were taking PPP loans and said, okay, if you can establish that you are a business that took a PPP loan and had these things happen, or were a business that that made you eligible, you can file a 3508 form. Now, the goal should be is to file the 3508 form. However, if you don't fit within these 3 requirements, then you're not going to be able to use it. So let's go over the 3 requirements. You have to be the self-employed independent contractor who did not have any employees at the time and did not include any employee salaries in the loan calculation. So what does that mean? For you real estate agents, for you mortgage brokers, for you 1099s that had filled out and received a PPP loan, you didn't have any employees, you just did it under your 1099 income, you would be eligible to deal with a 3508 EZ form. The next two exceptions are now dealing with businesses that did put in with employees, but did not deal with any reductions in not only salary or wages, but also when it comes to dealing with the numbers of employees. So businesses that did not reduce any salary or hourly wages by more than 25% during the covered period, which is January 1st to March 31st, and did not reduce the number of employees between January 1st and March 31st, you can use a 3508 EZ. The second exception and the second eligibility for using the EZ form is businesses that did not reduce salary or wages by 25% for the covered period or the alternative covered period of January 1st to March 31st and was unable to operate between February 1st after. So the point is this, on the third part, if you didn't reduce your employees by salaries by 25%, and you were unable to operate based upon the guidelines, you will still be able to use 3508 EZ. Okay, I'm sure that there'll be further questions, but there's no doubt that's the big picture on it. Okay, if you haven't reduced your employees or your salary from January through the end of March, or you didn't reduce by more than 25% of salary, and you weren't able to open, you can still apply under 3508 EZ. What happens in dealing with loan forgiveness? All forgiveness loans go to the lender of which dealt with your loan. Again, this is not an SBA loan per se, it is a SBA guaranteed loan. So you go back to the lender who closed your loan. Again, if in the event that there's a portion that is definitely not forgiven, then it's still the 1% interest rate, but it's now over the 5-year term. The first payment for anything that's not deferred is 6 months. So there is that deferral. Lender, so that you understand the process, when you apply for forgiveness and you apply and submit your 3508 or your 3508 EZ, you're in essence going to have 60 days for the lender to make that decision. You submit your application, you provide them the information, and then they have 60 days to get back to you and let you know whether or not they approve or not. If they don't, then the agency, SBA, has another 90 days after the 60 days to be able to look at your application and deal with forgiveness. So you're talking about almost 5 months of potential waiting until you know whether or not your loan has been forgiven. Now, take into consideration, during the application for forgiveness, you're not making any payments on the loan, and you have a 6-month deferral. So in essence, even if there's a portion that's not deferred, potentially no loan payments are going to be made under the PPP loan program for almost a year. Well, at least 11 months, okay? So bottom line is that these are changes under the Flexibility Act that is related to loan forgiveness. And in essence, you should be aware of it. I don't want anyone to think and panic that you've got to, if in the event that your loan proceeds, a portion of it is not forgiven, or you did use it for something else, that you need to start making payments immediately. So let's go over now the loan, the 3508 EZ. And the 3508 EZ is a very simple form. It's really 2 pages. The first page, you're going to put all of the information on top, which is the name of the borrower. And my opinion is definitely take your application when you first put in your PPP loan, and then any correspondence and communication that you got back from your lender when your loan was distributed, and more importantly, when you signed any loan documents or you got any of your loan closing documents under your PPP loan. This is where you're going to get all of the information that you need related to dealing with this page. You'll put in your legal name, your business address, your tax ID number, the phone numbers, the email address. It is extremely important for that to match. If you've moved or there's been a situation, then there's no doubt you can put in a new address, or if you've closed your location, then you'll put it in. But I would definitely let them know that, that the circumstances related to it, so that they know that they've got the right business. That's why your tax ID number is the most important as well. You're going to put down your PPP loan number, and the lender loan number should be the same. Sometimes lenders will have a different number, but for the most part, most lenders use the same PPP number as the SBA did. The loan amount, and more importantly, the biggest, most important part is the loan disbursement date. The loan disbursement date is when you receive the actual money. Now, some of you may have had more than one loan disbursement date because you may have gotten a certain amount at one point and then you dealt with a certain amount at the second point. If that's the case, both amounts are going to be extremely important, but it's when you receive the money, not when you sign the documents, okay? You're going to put the employees at the time of the loan and the employees at the time of the application for forgiveness. That's where the exemptions and the other stuff is going to come into importance, because again, if that number doesn't match, we need to make sure that you fit one of the exemptions, or you can show why you're still exempt even though your number of employees may have gone down. If you received any IDLE, you're going to put it there for disclosure. As I mentioned to you, the IDLE advance was a grant, so it's not to deal with having to repay it, but it definitely is to deal with disclosure. And then you'll put the application number of your IDLE loan, which generally is the email that you got back from SBA when they had let you know that your loan was approved and you had an application number. And then you'll put your payroll schedule. How often do you put in? The covered period, you're going to either choose the 8-week period or the 24-week period. If you're going to do an alternative payroll covered period based upon what you deal with, then you'll put that in there as well. And then, as you can see, it says if borrower received loans in excess of $2 million, check here. Why is that there? It's there because in the legislation, there is a requirement that loans that are over $2 million will be subject to audit. So if your loan process, if your loan is not, which again, it's a very small percentage, then you won't have to worry about that. And then in essence, all of the lines underneath it are to put numbers as to what you used for the payroll and non-payroll cost. Line 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all of the things that are eligible for forgiveness, and that's in essence what you're going to be putting there. And I apologize if some of you hear an alarm going in the background. They're doing testing in my building for fire alarm, so I apologize for that. On the potential forgiveness amounts, this is now where you're going to specifically identify which are the forgiveness amounts on 1, 2, 3, and 4, and why. Same thing, you're going to put the PPP loan amount. You're obviously also going to identify that that loan amount has met that 60% requirement, because as I had mentioned to you, if it does not meet the 60% payroll requirement, the entire loan will not be forgiven. And so in essence, line 8 is where you're going to put in the forgiveness amount of which you're requesting. The goal should be, so long as you've done 60% has gone to payroll and the remaining 40% has gone to rent or mortgage interest payments or utility payments, you're clearly going to be able to have all of it forgiven, and you'll be requesting all of it being forgiven. That's page 1. Now, page 2, just like on the application for PPP, there is a list and a area of which you're going to have to now certify. Many of you may have read the certification process was a situation where, there was concern about whether or not people were being honest and truthful in certifying. So to be frank with you, it's a subsequent method of making sure that what you certified on your original application was in essence correct. And they're having you recertify now, of which what you're stating, that you spent the money and how you spent the money and that it was eligible, and that anything that you're putting on here in essence is accurate. I'm gonna make sure that everyone understands. In the center of the page, you're gonna see a paragraph that starts the information. And this, of course, is the biggest issue that people get concerned about. which is, to make sure that they are absolutely being truthful. But it says the information provided in this application and the information provided in all supporting documents and forms is true and correct in all material respects. I understand that knowingly making false statements to obtain forgiveness of an SBA loan is punishable under the law, including, and that's the federal law, by imprisonment of no more than 5 years and a fine up to $250,000. There's been a lot of discussion. There's certainly been a lot of fear. The bottom line is this: if you've taken the money correctly because you knew you needed it and your business was impacted, and now you've spent it correctly, you should not have any issues. But please make sure that you do understand that you are signing this, and there is a penalty if in the event that you're not being truthful. I will tell you, and this may be for another seminar, Cindy, but the amount of reports that I've seen and the cases regarding fraud of people applying has been substantial. And so there's no doubt that, I don't suspect anyone listening to this webinar is within that, but I will tell you that, they are looking out and they are seeking people that are just not being truthful. The fact of the matter is, as long as your documents and the information and your spending is accurate, you shouldn't have any problem. I will also bring to your attention on the bottom part where it says, in addition, the authorized representative of the borrower must certify by initialing at least one. And it does talk about, in essence, the reduction of employees, as well as the your business being open or not being open. And again, that's because you're filling out the 3508 easy form. So that's the form that has to be dealt with. Now, these are things that I had discussed in the very beginning, but if you haven't realized, these are the things that you can only use the payroll protection plan proceeds for, especially if you want forgiven. If you do use it for things other than these things, then it will be considered a loan. It will then revert at 1%, and in essence, it'll be payable within 5 years. I also wanted to make sure that, again, everyone understood what is not eligible. These are the things that are, again, recapping what's not eligible under the PPP loan program for forgiveness. And these are the things that you should, again, be aware of. Proceeds can be used under the payroll portion, as well as the forgiveness for these things. As long as you've dealt with spending money on these things, then your loan will be forgiven, and you'll be able to put those things and the numbers to those things that you've spent on that first page of the PPP 3508 easy form. Now, what do you need to deal with when it comes to dealing with documents? You do not, when you submit your form back to the agents, to the lender under PPP, you do not have to submit actual documents. That's what page 2 is for, that you are self-certifying that this is the case. However, I do want to tell you what you need to hold and keep, so that if in the event that your loan ever comes up from audit or there's ever an issue related to your loan, then you do have this available. And these are the things that you need. You need to have your salary and wage documents so that you can show the proof of your 25%, you're not reducing 25% of your employees. So if you show, obviously, the payroll records through the covered period, and you show that number is equaling to at or at least less than 25% reduction, you need to have that. You also need to show that if you did ask anyone to come back, or people resigned, or they were fired for cause, or you couldn't find employees, you need documentation to show that. In my legal opinion, my recommendation is any communication dealing with your employees should be in writing, certainly by email. That's the easiest way to deal with rehiring people. If in essence you deal with everything over the telephone, or you do it by text message, just make sure that you keep a log, or you keep a record, or keep the text message, so that you can show that you made these attempts and that these were their responses. And so you dealt with showing that you made all good efforts in dealing with the process of rehiring employees to get back to that pre-COVID-19 employee level. You need to show that there was no reduction in employees. That again is going to be based upon your payroll records. You need to potentially show and have documentation that you were unable to operate the business between February 15th to the end of the covered period. If it's your 8-week period, then it's the 8-week period. If it's not the 8-week period and it's the 24-week period, you'll have to show that you were not able to operate. And what would be the case? Well, it could be that, you could have photographs. You can show that you had zero, you had no people coming in. You can show, if you take credit cards, you can show that there were no transactions dealt with during that period of time. So that will support that you were unable to operate. Clearly, if there were state mandates, federal mandates, county mandates, or city mandates mandating your business had to be closed, that as well will show that you had the inability to operate. Now, here is the biggest issue that I do want to say when it comes to dealing with records. You need to maintain those records for 6 years, because if you are subject to audit, the SBA or the government has the ability to request these documents up to 6 years from the date of which you had received received your forgiveness or you repaid in full. So think about it this way. For some of you that may have non-eligible expenses and you pay it out over that 5-year period, then the bottom line is your records you would have to keep for not only the 5 years, but also for 6 years after you've repaid the loan. Main thing is that after you've gotten the loan paid off or gotten it 100% forgiven, know that you're required to keep the supporting documents and the materials for 6 years afterwards. Now, for those of you who know that just dealing with the SBA loan under PPP or IDLE is not going to be enough, I again want to really focus and let everyone know that there is definitely some other alternatives. Most of my clients and many of the people who I'm dealing with, I am steering them towards the 7A loan program. It clearly is the flagship loan program. It is a government guaranteed program. The government guarantees your loan. You go to an SBA 7A lender. They process it, they approve it, and then the government gives them a guarantee. I will tell you that you can use the money for anything: refinance debt, acquire inventory, working capital. You can buy a business, deal with furniture, fixtures, and equipment. It could be used. It's the broadest use of any of the money that you're able to deal with in dealing with government money. They're very lenient in underwriting criteria. And I would tell you, especially during COVID, the criteria is definitely, the bar has lowered because again, they know that this is a great program and they want the SBA to be able to guarantee these loans other than under the PPP. Amortization, these are 10-year loan programs, and the rate is, it can go, the max is 2 3/4 over prime. So right now the loan amount would be 6% over a 10-year period. And the good thing about these loans, other than a standard conventional loan, is that you don't have a lot of reporting requirements. There are not a lot of restrictive covenants. You can pay yourself anything. A lot of conventional loans have different types of rules and requirements, and a lot of reporting requirements, whether it's monthly or quarterly or annual reviews for debt service coverage ratios. All of that is really non-existent on any of the SBA loan programs. Now, a lot of you may have questions regarding IDLE versus PPP, and I wanted to give you some guidance. This, just a few weeks ago, SBA published some guidance when it comes to dealing with an IDLE loan versus a PPP loan. And so the three main issues are: an IDLE loan may not be refinanced with a PPP loan when the borrower received the IDLE loan before January 31st or after April 3rd. So if you received your IDLE loan before the 31st of January or after April 3rd, you cannot use your PPP loan to, in essence, or you cannot use your IDLE loan to refinance it with a PPP loan, okay? So you can't take the money from the IDLE program and you can't refinance it with the money that you got under PPP if that's when you received your IDLE loan. Second one, an IDLE loan is not required to be refinanced with a PPP loan when you receive the funds between January 31st through April 3rd. So flip to the first one is when you, in essence, receive the money during that period. And you've received your PPP loan for other than payroll cost, okay? And then the last exception that you should be aware of is a PPP loan must be used to refinance the full amount when you receive the funds through January 31st through April 3rd, and you use the IDLE loan funds to pay payroll costs. So those are the three situations of which you have to use IDLE loan funds or PPP loan funds related to the other. My recommendation right now is if in the event that you've got these things happen, I suggest what you should be doing, which is to evaluate the best program. Right now, again, PPP is only open to June 30th. So if you do feel that you're still a candidate for PPP, even if you're an independent contractor, you've got to get your application in by June 30th. Otherwise, it's going to be IDLE loan or 7A loan. Identify really your short-term and long-term goals and needs for purposes of capital to get your business up and running or get you to have some cash in your pocket. And then the last thing is that if you do need additional capital, my opinion is as long as that amount is under $150,000, then I would definitely apply for IDLE, because the IDLE loan program takes you out 30 years. As opposed to the 7A program that takes you out 10 years. Now, if you do need more money, and let's just say some of you have got to buy more equipment, you've got to hire more employees, there are things that you need, definitely consider the 7A loan program so that you can really get back into where you were pre. And then I would tell you that a lot of my clients now, because the amount of money that's available, they are now looking to acquire other businesses. So some of you out there that have competitors that may not be able to reopen, I will tell you, getting an SBA loan to be able to acquire even your competitors or people that are going out of business, now's the time potentially to look at that and then be able to get that capital at a very low cost and utilize it and be able to expand and grow your business and be back even better than you were beforehand. So those are my kind of tips and my recommendations as far as what you should do. My information is here. If in the event that you need to reach out to me, please feel free to. My email address is there. My phone number is there. My paralegal's email. So if you do send me something, please copy my paralegal, and I'm happy to get in contact with you and speak with you and send you some additional guidance, because the one thing that I will tell you is that this is going to change over the next few months. It's not done. Many of you heard that there's additional legislation. There's another stimulus that's coming down. It will not only deal with individual monies that are going, like the first $1,200 and $2,400 that went to individuals, but there'll be additional relief for businesses. So just keep watching, keep listening, get your information from credible sources. And I promised Cindy as well as Andrea that I will continue to work with you guys and feed you as maximum amount of information and guidance as I can on a regular basis. I do appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ian. We really appreciate you coming here, and the information you gave us is invaluable. We really appreciate this. Let me get to some questions that we had typed in the chat room.
Sure.
And we have some in Q&A. So the IDLE gets deducted or repaid from PPP loan if you applied for a PPP loan after receipt of the IDLE.
Hold on, I didn't get that again.
Okay.
The IDLE?
The IDLE gets deducted or repaid from the PPP loan if you applied for a PPP loan after you received the IDLE.
If you did, as long as it's going to go towards payroll and the uses of what it's supposed to be for, yeah. So if we go back to the other slide that had the dates, and let me go back to that slide, okay? That's what I think you need to be aware of. Hold on, let me get this down. Okay. Here's the issue when it comes to dealing with having to use the IDLE loan money or refinancing IDLE loan money. So it's really when you receive the money. If you receive the money within certain periods of time, That will tell you whether or not you need the IDLE loan to refinance or not refinance the PPP, or whether the PPP loan has to be used. So in your case, if you're saying the third, which is a PPP loan must be used to refinance the full amount of the IDLE loan, that's whether or not you received your PPP loan money between January 31st through April 3rd, and you used the IDLE loan funds to pay payroll costs. Because remember, PPP loan funds could only be used if you wanted forgiven for those things. So if it was payroll, or if it was the things you used it for, and you received it during that period of time, then you have to use the PPP loan to deal with refinancing the IDLE loan.
Okay, thank you. Just so everyone knows, we're going to put this recording on our website as well as the PowerPoint presentation. So you'll be able to check on the website. Okay, my friend Eric Johnson has been waiting for you to come back. So let me ask his questions. Define employees. Are full-time employees different than part-time employees? I've seen a lot of the acronym FTE or full-time equivalent.
Right. So full-time employees, what they're looking for is they want to really look at your payroll, and they want to look at the number of employees. So if the issue is you're just gonna tweak the payroll so that the payroll stays the same, but you're going to diminish the amount of employees, that's not going to work. That's why when we talked about the 3508 easy form, it was about that you need to make sure that you have not reduced your employees or you reduced your payroll by 25%. So when they say equivalent, in essence, if you rehire, let's just say you don't hire the same full-time number, but you do part-time, and it's for the same amount of hours or close to the same amount of pay, then that would be considered to be okay. So it doesn't have to be the same amount of full-time employees, but it has to be the same amount of hours and close to the same amount of payroll compensation to be able to establish that, in essence, you're at the same level, and by December 31st, 2020.
Okay. And is the company match Social Security and Medicare payroll expenses eligible for the forgiveness?
The Social Security portion is deferred, but it's a payroll. The payroll cost, as far as the tax portion of it, is in essence not necessarily considered to be forgiven. Okay. The employee portion is, the employer portion is not.
Okay. For PPP forgiveness, what happens if you rehire all of your employees and then after 12 weeks you let someone go, and I believe it meant do not replace that person?
Well, if you are using the 8-week covered period, then you'll be fine, because after 12 weeks, you'll be okay. If you're using the 24-week period, then in essence, you can let them go, but you'd have to follow one of the exemptions that we talked about. There were 3 exemptions, and you'd have to show that the reason why you're not at the same number is because of one of these exemptions.
Okay, thank you. PPP loan, how do I apply if I don't have a paycheck? I'm a realtor, so I am on a 1099.
Right, so you can apply independent contractors. If you remember when the program went into place, the application time period was only for businesses with employees, and then about a week later, independent contractors that were eligible, such as realtors or mortgage brokers, they could apply. What you do is you use the same application. However, you're using your 1099 in order to calculate what you're eligible for. So in essence, if you have your broker issues you a 1099, you take the total amount, you divide it by 12 months, you multiply it by 2.5, and that's going to be the amount that you're eligible to apply for. You fill out the PPP application, you submit it to a lender, and then they will confirm your application. But anyone who's an independent contractor or self-employed, as long as you have your 1099 to establish your wages as far as your compensation, you can apply.
Is the forgiven amount taxable income?
What's that?
Is the forgiven amount taxable income?
No, the forgiven amount is just in essence loan forgiveness.
Can we use IDLE to pay off goodwill?
Goodwill, to pay off goodwill. I really don't understand that question. You could use the idle proceeds for virtually, put it this way, you could use your idle proceeds for virtually anything related to your business because it doesn't have the same restrictions and requirements as far as the PPP and the forgiveness. So it's more like working capital. You can use it for debt repayment. You could use it for buying equipment, for rehiring employees. You could use it for anything.
Okay. Is there a difference in ratios based on the covered period, 8 weeks or 24 weeks?
Again, I'm not sure what they mean by ratios, but it just means that the difference between the covered period is that you couldn't really utilize all the proceeds within the 8-week period, and you needed more time to be able to utilize the proceeds. So those for the businesses, in essence, it was the opportunity for businesses who really weren't up and running, got money, but yet weren't running at the pre-COVID levels. So the calculation is going to be the same, but the period of which you're going to say that you had to spend the money is what's changed.
Okay, thank you. Can you use all or most of the PPP funds for payroll over the course of 12 weeks and still get forgiveness?
Yeah, because you'll then be establishing now the 24-week period and not the 8-week period. Because you remember, you now have up to 24 months to use it for payroll and for all of the other forgiveness line items.
Okay. Do you have to choose 8 or 24 weeks to apply for PPP forgiveness, or can you do any number of weeks in between, like a 10-week program? And
well,
then
you can. You can, because in essence, it's up to 24 weeks, but you're not going to be doing it for the 8 weeks. So you're going to be, you would be electing to do it for the 24-week period, and the alternative period on that application, when you put it in for the 3508 application or the EZ, if you're going to specify that you used it within a certain period of time, you'll specify. But it's either maximum is 8 weeks or the maximum is 24 weeks. And if it's anything in between, you just specify about the period of which you're in essence spent the money.
Okay. Can you please go over the owner max limitation of $20,833? Does that mean that the max that is paid to owners that will be forgiven is $20,833, or does it mean that the max an owner can earn during the 8 or 24 weeks?
No, what it means is the max that an owner can use as compensation is that $20,000. And the reason for that is that when you applied for PPP, you use 2.5 as the multiplier, okay? And it caps out at $100,000. So no one could receive compensation for forgiveness more than $100,000. If you take that into consideration, you're talking about $8,333 a month, which would be how much you can pay yourself, multiply that by 2.5, and that's really where it comes out to be that way. So yeah, it's a max.
Okay. Which payroll taxes are not forgiven, employer or employee? And if you are part of a PEO, do admin and delivery fees count to your total forgiven payroll costs?
Yeah, so any fee related to a PEO or for a payroll service is considered a payroll cost. And for purposes of the forgiven portion of it, the employee is the forgiven portion of it because that's payroll. The employer is deferred.
Okay, perfect. How do you obtain or download Form 3508EZ? What is contact information for an IDLE application?
Yeah, well, you can go to SBA's website, or Department of Treasury has the SBA Form 3508. And then what was the second question, Cindy?
And then the second one is, what is contact information for an IDLE application? That's
there's no really contact information.
Yeah.
You go to SBA website. So if you go to sba.gov, and you will see application for IDLE. The beauty of IDLE is that, you know, when IDLE was first started, it was for all businesses. And then at some point in time, within about 2 months into the program, they then cut it off for businesses and only did for agricultural related businesses. With the new Flexibility Act, they then reopened it. So now every business, including agricultural businesses, are eligible, including nonprofits. So they reopened it because at some point in time for about almost a month and a half, it was only available for agricultural related businesses. But now everyone, and just go to SBA's website to be able to do the online application.
Okay, all right, and this one is a little long, but I applied for the EIDLE advance in early April. About 2 weeks ago, I had a hard pull performed on my personal credit by the SBA. I soon realized that I had been processed through the full SBA EIDLE, which I did not want. I have spoken to the SBA field office, and they stated that I needed to approve some amount in order to receive the EIDLE advance. I went ahead and asked to be considered for a $10,000 loan, or the same amount of the advance. Now I am getting a denial letter for the EIDLE. What should my next steps be?
Well, under EIDLE guidelines, if you are denied, the SBA will send you out a letter as to why you're denied, and then you have the ability to file what we call a request for reconsideration, which is basically an appeal. So I don't know if there's a connection related to, you know, your situation of you got approved, but yet when you didn't know what amount you wanted, then they denied it, because that's generally not the case. I mean, if you've been approved, you're approved. People get denials if they're found to be ineligible, or in essence, they've had prior defaults to the government. I mean, there are definitely eligibility issues. The SBA EIDLE loan program is not a guarantee of getting it. They do pull credit, as you know, and they're going to look as far as your ability to repay. But you have to wait until you get your denial letter and then find out specifically why you got denied. And then at that point, you have the right to file a request for reconsideration.
Okay. Well, Ian, I want to thank you very much for doing this presentation again. We really appreciate your knowledge and information that you shared with us. And hopefully we'll be having you back when we have some new laws put into place.
There's definitely, that's going to happen. That's almost a guarantee. So like I said, I'm always happy to help. I, again, want to offer my services to anyone. If in the event that you have any additional questions, feel free to reach me. Feel free to reach out to me. Email is best. And I'm happy to provide you some additional assistance and some additional guidance as much as I can. I will definitely tell everyone that, you know, now's the time, especially for you business owners out there. I mean, listen, if you're a member of the chamber, there's no doubt that you enjoy being in business, you enjoy being an entrepreneur. You know, now's where we're unfortunately going to find out, you know, what you're made out of, so to speak, in the event that, you know, you can pick yourself up from this tragedy and be able to move forward. But I rest assured there is capital available and it is accessible. And so you just need to, you know, go over what needs to happen and make sure that you have the guidelines. If you're dealing with PPP, deal with a lender who knows what they're talking about. If you're dealing with the agency, make sure to file it. But it's available. Capital and money should not be an issue when it comes to dealing with getting you back open for business, and more importantly, to grow and expand your business now and take advantage of, you know, the low interest and the ability to be able to get money. You know, I will tell everyone, and just like I tell all of my business clients, do not use the easy money via credit cards or all of these other alternative methods to be able to fund your business, especially when money is so cheap through these government programs.
Thank you. And for everybody who is here, we will be putting the presentation on our website. So please look for it. Ian, you will share the slides with us, correct? The PowerPoint?
I will. I did see, unfortunately, no matter how many times I go through things, Cindy, I find a few typos here and there, but I will clean it up and I'll definitely get it to you so that you guys will have the latest and the greatest.
Thank you so much. We
Okay.
really appreciate it. Thanks.
Super.
See you soon.
My pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.